So you became a believer in the 70s, and that was before there was really a strong Messianic movement. What was that like? How did you find your footing?
I was riding on a bus, a lawyer on the bus was reading his Bible every day. I sat down next to this lawyer. He knew that I was Jewish with a name like Liberman. He began to explain to me about prophecy concerning Israel, and I ran home. And I said, I hope he's wrong. So every year I would go to Israel for our board meeting. She would say, Paul, you're supposed to be in Israel. And I said, Shira, it's no good. I wouldn't fit in Israel. and I hear this prophecy, 1 Peter 2:15, and I thought, whoa, wait a minute. Those two things could go together. By your good deeds, it could change the opinion of the man in the street. Maybe this is God acting through the Joseph Project. I committed myself to forming the Joseph Project in Israel. I told Joel, you'll never be able to do it from the United States. It has to be from within Israel.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm your host for today, Miranda Weinberg, and I'm joined today by a legacy, Paul Liberman. Paul, thank you for being here with us.
An honor to be here.
We're so excited to have you. I mean, I think that the majority of people would be familiar with your name because of your books that you've written as an author. So can you tell us the titles of your books?
The first one was written in 75 and published in 1976.
Okay.
We were such a young movement, and we were misunderstood by the traditional Jewish community, by the evangelical Christian community, and even the Hebrew Christians of the time were very critical of this young fledgling effort for a Messianic identity. So I went to my congregational leader and said, listen, everyone else is saying what we believe, but we're not saying. So I presented him with an outline of what I thought he should cover. And he says, I'm too busy and I shouldn't write it. You should, Paul. So that's how it got started. And once I began, it just flowed out. And it's remained as a primer, as an explanation about our movement.
And that's the Fig Tree Blossom.
The Fig Tree Blossoms. And the second one was Don't Call Me Christian, which is biographical for the period of, say, 1970 through 1984, during which that period was all about evangelism. That's what the movement was all about, evangelism. Then about that time in 84 or 85, it shifted. And the movement seemed to me was now focused much more on congregations and congregational organizations and so on. And a little later, I jointly wrote with my friend Jack Wasson a book called Time of Jacob's Trouble, which is an extensive prophetic book about the tribulation and future eschatology. And now in recent times, last couple of months, there's a new book out, not a sequel to Don't Call Me Christian, and it's Call Me Messianic.
Okay, I'm excited to read that one. I've heard good things.
Good.
So for someone that doesn't know, that hasn't read your book, maybe just in like a quick 60 seconds, could you explain what the fig tree is? What does it represent?
Well, the fig tree is a biblical symbol for the nation of Israel. So the fig tree blossoms says that Israel is beginning to blossom, not only as a country, but there's a spiritual blossoming too among the Jewish people, and we're it.
That's amazing. So you became a believer, I think it was in the 70s, right? And that was before there was really a strong Messianic movement. What was that like? How did you find your footing in that?
Well, my official date was March 5th, 1971, and I thought I was the only Jewish person, which is not that unusual. Mm-hmm. But
can you tell us how it happened?
Well, I was riding on a bus, and there was just a lawyer on the bus that was reading his Bible every day, and everyone was kidding him about, here comes Holy Joe. And I had a quick move up in the political world, and I thought, this is strange. Why am I catching so many breaks? And things are it just seemed like I had won some kind of favor. And so I thought, there's something out there beyond what I can see, which was different than being an agnostic or an atheist. And so I sat down next to this lawyer, and he knew that I was Jewish with a name like Liberman. And so he began to explain to me about prophecy concerning Israel. And I thought, this is really fascinating because it tells me that events are ordered and that there's a script. So I sat down next to him again another time, and this time he's waiting for me with his booklet about all the Messianic prophecies and their fulfillment in the New Covenant. I was very offended. I asked the bus driver to stop and in the rain, and I ran home, and I said, I hope he's wrong.
Wow.
But I read his booklet, and that's how I became a believer.
Wow. It's incredible.
Yeah.
How did your family respond?
Well, I was the black sheep of the family. They did not understand at all, and they were ashamed of me.
Sorry.
But I just thought, if God's on my side, what do I care what anybody thinks or says? It's going to be all good. So, on the other hand, if I was having some job insecurity, and maybe God would help me with that. So, but if he doesn't, then I'll know that my original assumption about being an agnostic was correct. And it was just good luck that I caught all these breaks. But during the year, a number of people spoke up for me, and it worked out very well. God came through for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So from that, from those early beginnings, I had an issue of getting my family to agree. So my two sons, they were 4 and 6 years old, and they readily became believers. Dad used to read the children's Bible with them at night, but my wife was not buying it. So that was a problem for a few years. But
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, we were just in two different worlds. So, but she, after a couple of years, she did come around, and then we were a united family, and the question became, now what? Are we Jewish? Are we Christian? What's going to be with our sons? And we did not want them to have a schizophrenic sense of identity. Mm-hmm. So we thought, well, we need a community, however small it is. At least we'll be able to steer our own ship. So that's where the emphasis was on forming a Messianic congregation.
And so you found one?
Yes, May 18th, 1973. To the best of my knowledge, it was the second congregation in the United States in the modern era. And the Chernoff family had one in Cincinnati. And so they were like mentors to me because they had already accomplished what I wanted to do, and they could show me how. So we became good friends, and that transferred to they passed away, but that passed to their 3 children, whom to this day I still defer to them. Wow.
So you were instrumental in helping quite a few congregations get off the ground. Is that correct?
Yes. Back in those days, there weren't any congregational leaders that were Messianic. So there were 6 or 8 or maybe even 10 of us that would make the circuit. And you would be called on to visit. You would be a visiting speaker in this city and that city. And so half a dozen or so of us would be on this circuit.
Circuit riders.
Yeah. And some of them are still, they're Messianic congregational leaders today. And but by the by, there did get to be some people who were willing to set aside their secular occupations and become ministry congregational leaders.
And you made that leap.
I was a secular person, initially in national politics. But later as a small business entrepreneur, and I was sure I did not belong in ministry. I'm just not the type. So, but I imported somebody else to run my congregation that I had started, and And then, but after about 10 years, I moved out to San Diego. And what to do? Now what am I going to do? I got the same problem again for my family. And I didn't know what to do because I'm just not the pastoral type. So then I was reflecting in my swimming pool. That literally reflecting. And I thought, Paul, you're not a new believer anymore. And for the first time, you could do this as you feel it should be done. And that grabbed me. I got goosebumps. So I'm praying about it. And I got a call from Moshe Rosen, the founder of Jews for Jesus. He said, Paul, yesterday I was praying and you were in my mind all day.
Wow.
So he says, I want to come down and visit with you, find out what this is about.
Wow.
So we were friends, and I always thought that he was both wise and smart. And so we're, shushking with one another all day. And finally I said, so Moish, why are you here? He says, well, Paul, let me see. So I said, Moish, I'll do something that you would normally do. Moish, in one sentence, why are you here? So he said, well, Paul, I want you back in the game. What does that mean? I want you back in the game. But that's what I thought I heard from the Lord. So I said, well, because I don't know what to do. And maybe you can inform me. Well, what are you thinking about? I said, well, frankly, I'm thinking about starting a congregation. He says, that's it. That's what you're supposed to do. And so
oh my
with
goodness.
that, I started another congregation called Tree of Life in San Diego. And I found out that if you hang out a shingle, love spoken here, people will come.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found out that people enjoyed listening to my messages and that I didn't see myself as a congregational leader, but they did. So, it was
God sees things in us that we don't see in ourselves,
Huh?
right? God sees things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then when in the story did you move to Israel?
I was 10 years, a little over 10 years in San Diego. Congregation was running fine. I owned a small business, and I felt called to Israel. I had another mentor, Shira Sorkoram, who really, she had a work called MAOs, and she had asked me to be on her founding board. And I did that for about 35 years. And so every year I would go to Israel for our board meeting, and she would say, Paul, you're supposed to be in Israel. You're supposed to be in Israel. And I said, Shira, it's no good. I wouldn't fit in Israel because I don't feel called to Israel. It wouldn't work out. So that brought us up to about 1988. And there was a big conference, and afterwards I waited for our usual conversation. And she said, Paul, I've concluded that you were right. You should not move to Israel.
Really?
I've concluded you were correct. And so I think this will settle it. So I said, yeah, that's good. So she says, there is one thing. She says, as a friend, would you do me a favor? I said, sure, of course. What is it? So she says, when you get home, would you pray to be called?
Oh, no.
So when I got home, 2 weeks later, I'm remembering that I'm supposed to pray to be called, but I didn't want to be called. So I squeezed it out like you pray for an enemy. I said one sentence, one time, Lord, I pray to be called Israel. That's it. I fulfilled my obligation. And during the year, I felt increasingly compelled. I'm with an Israeli newspaper. I'm reading all kinds of books on Zionism. And at a certain point, why am I thinking about this all the time? All the time. And then I said, well, Paul, I guess you're just called Israel. So I moved there for 9 years, and I never expected to come back. But the Lord had other ideas, and there was work waiting for me here.
You moved there when your kids were adults already? Or
Yes.
Okay, so they stayed here.
Well, we had a family plan as to how to do it.
Okay.
And my son Evan was a computer programmer, and he could get a job in Israel. So he said, "All right, Evan, you got a free vacation. You go ahead, and if you can get yourself a job on your vacation, just stay there. Mom and I will move you. We'll move your furniture. We'll take care of everything else. Hang on to that job." And then Joel's a CPA, so he'll clean up my business affairs after Mom and I moved to Israel. And so it was all of us or none of us. We're going to make this move. So Joel said, Dad, I think you're right. We are supposed to make the move to Israel. He said, but I don't think your method is right. He said, we all have to go on the same airplane. He says, because anything can happen even in one day if we're not on the same airplane. I listened to Joel, but I thought, well, that can't be right. It'll work out. So we went ahead, and Evan moved to Israel and 1993, and we came a few months later, and then it was time for Joel to hold up his end. But something happened. He met Darcy, his wife, and that changed everything. And so she was living about 75 or 100, about 100 miles away. And so Joel said, well, listen, why don't, you're a receptionist. Why don't you move down to San Diego so we can have a normal dating relationship? And Darcy says, well, I would be willing to move down to San Diego just as soon as you put a ring on my finger. So
you go, girl.
So we put a ring on her finger.
That sounds like her.
And that was that. So Joel and Darcy stayed in San Diego, and Joel took over my congregation in San Diego.
And still to this day,
yep.
Congregation's standing and thriving. So that's incredible.
Oh yeah, Joel and Evan both are respected people, and and they got there on their own hook. They didn't have to do with the old man. Each of them is a highly competent person.
Yeah, your family is incredible, and your legacy is incredible. So let's talk about what happened when you got to Israel. You suddenly, I believe I'm getting the story right, that you got a call from Joel Chernoff. Is that how it happened?
Oh, well, I was in Israel. I did the language thing and studied intensively. I had bought a half interest in a believer's business. In the importing business, because I had done that before in the United States. And then there was a kind of an emergency in that there was legislation introduced in the Knesset to make us illegal, that you would not be able to have a new covenant Bible or attend Messianic meetings or anything like that. We would be illegal.
Wow.
So there was a meeting called of all of the congregation leaders in the land, and I was the newest one.
Sorry, so can we back up a little bit? So you ended up establishing a congregation in Israel?
No, I was raised up into an existing congregation.
Okay.
They knew that I had been a congregation leader before, and in Israel, the model is different. You have 2, 3, 4 congregation leaders because nobody gets a salary. So that's why you share the load.
Yeah.
So I was invited to the meeting, and I'm listening to the conversation around. They said, well, regarding the Orthodox rabbis, we'll fight them till they win. And I thought, what a defeatist attitude,
And so with your political background, I'm sure your mind was...
I said, hey, man, what kind of fight is that? So then, but I'm keeping my mouth shut because I'm the newest guy. So then Wayne Hilsden raises his hand, and he's a very respected guy in the land. And he says, if we're electing a committee, we got to have Paul Liberman on it. He's the only one of us who knows anything about politics. Mm-hmm. So I was on the committee, and after about 60 days, the chairman had to resign. And suddenly I was the chairman of this political action committee. And my thinking was, let's not fight it in the land. Let's fight it from outside the land where we're on the high ground.
Okay.
So we mobilized, and the MJAA raised at least $600,000, and there was other money that came in for this purpose also. So we took out advertisements in Hebrew, English, and Russian, and we had a campaign of with 700 organizations would reprint our reports.
Okay.
And
where did you take out advertisements? Like in the newspaper?
all the newspapers.
Okay.
And I engaged a.
And they said, like, what was the headline? Do you remember? Something.
Well, it wasn't. We weren't relying on headlines. We were relying on advertising.
Okay.
So in the advertising, we just put in Messianic prophecies all the time. Isaiah 53, we took out a full page.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, but over a period of months, they all, many dozens of prophecies, and the Orthodox are choking on it.
Yeah.
And so we defeated that legislation. And then another rabbi and another party introduced a similar piece of legislation. And so we revved up the bubble machine and we beat them again. And a third party, a third rabbi, said he wanted to make a try of it. So he went to the committee and said he wanted to introduce his legislation. The committee chairman said, no, we'll not allow that because the bosses in the United States said no.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I'm done with that. And
not at risk of being illegal anymore. So you think?
Yeah. So now I'm having Joel Chernoff, who we've worked together on many things. He's made a trip to Israel. He's staying in my apartment, and he's there because he's got a vision since 1996 for the Joseph Project, an actual vision. But nothing's happening. So it's already 1999. It's February of 1999, and nothing's happened. So I said, so Joel, tell me about your Joseph Project. He had always tried to get me interested. I was not interested. He says, but there is a scripture that really motivates me. So what's that? He says, 1 Peter 2:15, for this is the will of God, that by your good deeds you shall silence the ignorant talk of foolish men. And I thought, wow, that really grabs me too. It's so on point. And I remembered that on December 25th, 1989, there was the Beresford's decision basically disqualifying Messianic Jews from citizenship. And so I read the Supreme Court decisions of all of the judges. There were 7 judges. I read all of their. One guy says, well, because you were baptized. Another one said, well, because you joined a church. And I'm reading these opinions. And the last guy, Judge Barak, he writes and he says, well, it doesn't have to do with any of that. It has to do with the opinion of the man on the street. So he says, but that could change. I thought, it's not much daylight, but there's some. Mm-hmm. So that's December 25th, 1989, that decision. And now this is now 1999. And I hear this prophecy, 1 Peter 2:15, and I thought, whoa, wait a minute. Those two things could go together. Because that particular scripture, by your good deeds, it could change the opinion of the man in the street. Maybe this is God acting through the Joseph Project.
Wow.
And based upon that possibility that we could change the opinion of the man in the street by our good deeds, so to speak, I committed myself to forming the Joseph Project in Israel. I told Joel, you'll never be able to do it from the United States. It has to be an effort from within Israel. And so started on my dining room table, and I began to import containers. And by the by, I had been getting exceptions signed off by some people I knew. And they finally said, look, Paul, we can't do this for you anymore. This is a business with you. So you'll have to get permission from the government. So I called the Ministry of the Interior, and I made inquiry, and they said, well, you have to understand, we only have 8 formal charities in Israel, and we don't want 9.
Why not?
Well, because we just don't want a proliferation of charities. And I guess they were concerned about money laundering or undercutting domestic production or whatever. So we were going to be out of business. So I said, so after a while I said, well, but there's nothing illegal about my making application. No, of course, but you heard, we have 8, we don't want 9.
Mhm.
So I said, well, actually, I would like to make application, and then if it's not approved, you'll write me back as to why we were not approved, and my lawyer will want to know why, which was a veiled threat. I'm going to make a fight of it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I said, then in subsequent conversations, I said, it's actually going to make, potentially it could make a real newspaper article that you won't permit such things.
Your politics were going in.
Right. So I said, so why don't you protect yourself and investigate us and do an audit? You'll find that we're clean as a whistle. Okay, we'll do that. So from the Shas political party, they sent out 2 guys with black hats and black coats with the payas.
Intimidating.
And so the young guy, he goes in to do his accounting audit, and my assistant and I are, with our broken Hebrew, we're trying to entertain this older guy. And so in the afternoon, the accountant comes out and says, look, they look fine. I can't find anything wrong. So now in perfect New York English, this older guy says, all right, why are you doing this?
Oh my gosh.
After we struggled with breaking our teeth on the Hebrew all day.
I bet he was waiting to do that.
So he says, why are you doing it? So I said, well, it has to do with the ingathering. He says, what do you mean by the ingathering? I said, so I began to rattle off the prophecies from the Tanakh about the restoration at the ingathering of Jews from all the countries. And so, but I'm doing so, I'm remembering one after another, much better than my normal memory would permit. I'm quoting them and,
Coming from your spirit.
Yeah, right. I mean, even I was impressed with Paul. I just don't, my memory's not that good. And so he says,
I don't know, you have dates down really well.
so he says, so you believe the scriptures? I said, that's why we're here. I said, what do you think? I'd move from the United States to here unless I was motivated by the scriptures? He says, I believe you. He says, and I'm going to approve your application. So now there were 9. And so for 10 years, we were the only ones permitted to import humanitarian aid. Then after 10 years, the Knesset said, why are we fighting this? Let's get more. And so then it was open for a lot of other organizations. But as a practical matter, they found it just easier to work through the Joseph Project.
Along that line of thought of changing the perception of the man on the street, the common man, where do you think we are now?
Well, the scriptures say, not by might nor by power, but by God's Spirit. Isn't that the Joseph Project? It doesn't. Yeah. We're not pushing to fight it through or force it through or twist anybody's arm. We're just wanting, that's God's Spirit on the part of the donors who pay for the cargo, on the part of the Christian charities that are donating whole carloads of goods, and the volunteers. It's all out of selflessness, up and down the line. That's God's Spirit, not by might, nor by power, but by God's Spirit. And I think we've moved the needle. I think we've, over a period of 30 years, 25 years, we've made real progress in getting people to think better of the Messianic movement.
What do you think is going to be the next push to keep that needle moving?
Well, I think that it won't happen quickly, but it is happening. And I'll surface a speculative thought on my part
Okay.
as to where it's all leading. Assuming that this is a correct theory, that the opinion of the man on the street will change and is changing. Yeshua said of the traditional rabbis, he said that you are blind leaders of the blind, leading our people into a ditch. And I look at it and I say, well, that's exactly what happened. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people have been in a ditch spiritually. So how are we going to get out of the ditch? Well, it's not going to be through the Talmud. And Christianity's tried to do something about the Jews. They never were able to pull it off. So something is going to change, and it needs to be a new leadership. And that new leadership will be under the auspices of Yeshua, and we are his agents. So in my speculative long-range mind, I think that there is a new leadership forming up, and we're the Messianic movement, and that the leadership will, in time, it'll take some lengthy period of time, that what's going on now are the very earliest stages of that leadership emerging. And but the Lord can pull us off, and is pulling it off. That's my speculative thought as to where it's all going. That the movement as a whole does not realize or have this thought. But where else is that new leadership going to come from? How else are we going to get out of the ditch? And we've got the vision, and we've got the support of the Lord, and we catch the breaks. We have to struggle, but we catch the breaks. To me, it all makes sense. That's where I think we're going.
That's awesome. So you've lived such a life of obedience and saying yes, and it feels like the Lord has just picked you up from one place, dropped you in another. Yeah. What would you say to the listeners that maybe feel that stir of like, okay, I feel I'm supposed to take a leap of obedience? What would you say to that person?
Go, go, go. In other words, yeah, there's resistance, and yeah, it's many struggles, but it always works out. If you stay with it, it always works out. And we have the Lord's backing. In writing, we have a written document guaranteeing our success.
That's so good.
So then you say, well, I'm just one person. I'm a pipsqueak person. But we all feel that way. We all feel that way. And but those people in the New Testament, they felt like they were pipsqueak people too. And so the thing is to just keep going at it. And I think even after 50 years or 55 years in the Messianic movement, I feel we are all still in on the ground floor. This is a ground floor operation, and we're all pioneers. And so I say, listen, none of us feel like we can be the hero. I mean, as soon as you get to think you're the hero, that's when somebody else gets chosen. So we're there with the right vision, and the vision is our strong suit. So long as we're pushing the vision, it's the vision that carries us, the Messianic vision, the vision for what will eventually happen to the nation of Israel. That vision is long-term, but it's real and achievable, and we have the Lord's backing. So I say, jump in, Jew and Gentile both, jump in. I cannot think of a better way. I cannot think of a more profitable way to have spent my years. I'm 55 years in the movement. To have spent my years than what I've done, because all of it counts towards credits in heaven. What else could you do that would be more profitable? So I say there's a role for both the Jews and the Gentiles. Okay. And so everybody should jump in and get behind what the Lord is doing. There's a steamroller, And the question is, do you want to be out in front of the steamroller and get run over? Or do you want to get behind it and help push? Kind of an obvious thing, huh?
Either way, that steamroller's coming through.
It's coming through. Right.
Get behind it or get out of the way.
That's it. That's it.
Okay. So, and there's another person I want you to address that might be listening. The person that maybe is a younger or a you that's sitting on the bus, that's thinking, that's curious, but is a little afraid to make the leap, like you're saying, to go, to jump into this Messianic faith. What would you say to that person?
Well, I can identify because I was in that exact situation. And I thought I was the only Jew on the face of the earth. And I would be misunderstood. And I thought to myself, life can seem long and hard. But if God would actually be with me, I will be successful. I can get things done. And if that's the case, what do I care what anybody thinks or says? The heck with them. The heck with what anybody thinks. I'm going with the Lord. On the other end, if I don't follow this, what can be my future if the source of the power is not behind me? So when you sort it out that way, it becomes kind of an obvious decision. Do I want to be successful or do I want to be unsuccessful? Take your choice.
Yeah.
So that's how I sorted it out. And I would invite your viewers to consider it that way.
Your story's so incredible and inspiring. And it's just amazing how the Lord's been able to use you and use your words to reach millions of people. I mean, just all around the world, people reading your book. I know my grandfather read your book, my dad, and it's just beautiful to see the legacy that you've created. So before we close, is there anything that I missed? Anything that you wanted to share? Maybe I didn't get to ask.
Well, I feel like those of us who are participants, both Jew and Gentile, in the Messianic movement, that didn't happen by accident. It was very purposeful that we became believers in anyhow. And then to have caught the vision. I didn't give you the vision and you didn't give me the vision. That vision came from God and it's not going away.
Amen.
And that's our strong suit. So let's just pursue the vision no matter what. And because we're in it, no matter what, we will succeed.
Amen. I believe that as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, my pleasure.
We really appreciate it.
Okay.
And if you enjoyed this episode, if it reminded you of someone, we ask that you would share it with them. Like and comment. Let us know your thoughts. And please subscribe so that you can continue to receive content like this directly to you. We appreciate you.